There are certain kinds of horror we all remember. The browser games that didn't waste any time trying to terrify you. The House and the House 2 were infamous. Quick, brutal jumpscare factories passed around school computers and forums like urban legends. Simple, unsettling, and built to make you flinch. Today, we're diving back into both games to preserve this bite-sized slice of internet history. Both The House and its sequel, The House 2, are short classic flash horror games from the mid-2000s developed by Synthai Studios. The first game released in 2005, with the follow-up arriving in 2010. They became infamous for their unsettling atmosphere and heavy reliance on jump scares. Perfect late-night internet fuel back when these kinds of creepy browser games were everywhere. The setup is pretty straightforward. You step into a cursed, abandoned house tied to a family tragedy. No exploration, no combat, just simple point-and-click horror built entirely around atmosphere and shock scares. The House 2 expanded the idea slightly, adding more locations and sharper visuals, but at their core, these games were all about that raw, fast-paced horror experience in bite-sized form. They've lingered in people's memories because of just how well they tapped into that simple, primal fear of the unknown. Both games are very simple point-and-click horror experiences. You move through different rooms, clicking on objects. Sometimes you've got to click multiple times to trigger events. Each room builds tension with a rising heartbeat sound, leading to a quick jump scare or a creepy reveal. Once you've hit all the right interactions, you get one final scare before moving on. In the first game, you start in the dining room, where things feel off right away. There's a simple family photo on the wall and a doorway leading to another room. Pretty quickly, a ball drops from the ceiling, and you hear a kid laughing when you click on it. Then you'll catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure running past, and the glass on the family picture cracks, right where the boy's face is. The creepiest moment comes when a headless figure appears at the window, then disappears, and finally, the ball bursts in a spray of blood, dropping the boy's severed head right in front of you. The vibe here makes it really clear. This wasn't a happy accident. The boy was murdered, most likely in this room. You're not given every detail, but it sets the tone immediately. Thunder rolls as you step into the next room, the bathroom. Lightning flashes across the walls, and at first it looks kinda normal. There's a working toilet, a bottle of pills on the floor labeled "Take Twice Daily," and "Poison" written on it. There's a birthday note on the cabinet. "Happy birthday, Mom. I know you're suffering from an illness, but we're sure you'll be fine soon. Love you." But the same note later reads, "I love you too, kids. I will not leave you. I promise. I promise." And that's when the room begins to unravel. Blood fills the toilet, the bathtub overflows with something far worse. Lightning reveals a silhouette standing outside the window, then inside. Eventually, a pale woman with long black hair slowly rises from the water. She doesn't scream, doesn't speak, she just stares, until a hand slams on the screen. This was the mother's room, and likely where she died. Based on clues throughout the house, she was suffering from cancer, and that illness pushed her into something much darker. She murdered her family, her husband, her son, her daughter, so they'd never leave her. The poison may have been her way out. Maybe it numbed her body, maybe it paralyzed her, but whatever it was, she died here. And now she watches anyone who dares to step inside it. The player enters an old, nasty kitchen. The only visible objects at first are two stacked containers, a toy doll, and a wall calendar. That doll, a porcelain figure, hangs by a string from a shelf, gently swaying when it's touched. It's the first warning of what's to come. The calendar is dated Friday, March 5th. Scrawled above the day is a chilling reminder: cancer treatment. A slow, rhythmic dripping echoes in the background, and soon distant screams begin to fade in. Thin, weak, like they're trying to reach you through the walls. Then, from beyond a nearby door, a woman leans into view. Her face lingers just long enough to register, before she vanishes. A shadowy silhouette moves across the wall, and then something falls from the ceiling. A student ID card. Maria S. Julie, St. Martin Scott School. The ID slides off the container where it landed, and a moment later, a schoolgirl's body crashes through the ceiling. She's hanging from the noose. Still in her skirt, her body sways slowly in front of the screen. The hanged girl is most certainly Maria, presumably the family's daughter. That dangling doll, a grim foreshadowing of her fate. The calendar entry was likely meant for the mother, referencing her illness, the same one hinted at in the bathroom. The fact that the mother appears again here watching from the doorway implies something even more disturbing. She's following the player from room to room, watching and stalking. This room doesn't just show us how the daughter died, it shows us how tightly the mother's presence still grips the house. Next is the living room. It's almost completely stripped bare, just a portrait on the wall and a small radio left behind. The player turns the radio on, a series of songs begin playing, fragments of something once normal, now deeply out of place. Eventually the radio shuts off. Looking back at the portrait, something shifts. The man's eyes begin to move. Just a flicker, just enough to make you look again. Suddenly, the entire portrait crashes from the wall, revealing a hollowed-out space behind it. Inside, there's a letter. "Sorry and goodbye, honey. I'm so lucky to be your wife. I will always love you." Lying next to the note is a handgun. The player takes it. A few moments later, a ghostly man in a white coat passes silently across the screen. The portrait, still lying on the ground, begins to bleed. Thick red pours from the man's eyes and mouth. Without warning, the player fires the gun, shooting the portrait in the head. Blood splatters the wall behind it. The man in the portrait is almost certainly the father. The note hidden behind it, signed by his wife, reads like a final confession. She loved him, but she killed him, likely with the very gun now in the player's hands. And then she hid both the weapon and her apology behind his likeness, sealing them into the wall. It's not just a room, it's a grave marker. We step into the last stretch of the house, a narrow corridor cloaked in shadows. The light switch clicks, it buzzes to life, and on the floor, a final note. "I'm sorry to God what I have done. I love my family, so I kill myself. It's the only thing I can do to stay together with them, forever." It's quiet, then something moves, just a silhouette passing along the wall. The light begins to flicker, blood spills out from the switch. A slow drip falls from the ceiling and lands right on the letter, before it starts to bleed. And then she returns, the woman. Her face hidden beneath that curtain of hair, appears at the end of the hall. Slow, inevitable. Darkness. The light flicks back on, she's right there, inches from your face. Her scream splits the room in two, and as her hair parts, you see what's left. No eyes, just blood pouring from her sockets. And a mouth that never should have opened again. The screen goes black, and that's the end. Even though we saw her in the bathroom and in the kitchen, she wasn't done. The mother returns in the corridor for one final appearance, and it's strongly implied that she kills the player here. Her missing eyes might be from decomposition, or maybe something worse. Maybe she gouged them out in the bath before she died. That would explain the blood mixing with the water back in the tub. That was never bath water, that was the last thing she ever saw. The story behind the house and the family trapped inside it is slowly pieced together through the notes, the objects, and the ghosts left behind. At the heart of it all is the mother. She had cancer, a fatal case. We know from the medication in the bathroom, the treatment marked on the calendar, and the birthday letter from her kids that she was fighting it, and that the family was trying to stay hopeful. But something in her broke. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was grief long before death had even arrived. Whatever it was, she convinced herself the only way to keep her family close was to kill them, so she did. She decapitated her son, shot her husband, and hanged her daughter. And then, when it was done, she turned her regret inward and took her own life in the bathroom. Whether it was by poison, drowning, or self-mutilation, we don't know for sure, but the aftermath is clear. The family never left. Their spirits remained bound to the house and to her. And while most of them seem to ignore us as we wander through, the mother doesn't. She confronts us, stalks us, reaches for us. Maybe it's her madness still clinging to the living, or maybe it's her own twisted way she thinks she's protecting them from us. There's even a clue about when this all happened. Maria's student ID shows it was valid from 1980 to 1983, and in the kitchen, the calendar marks a cancer treatment schedule for Friday, March 5th. That only lines up with 1 year in that window, 1982. So sometime that year, everything in this house came undone, and it never got put back together. If you've made it this far into the house, thank you. We archive forgotten and overlooked games every week, from haunted horror gems to PS2 oddities and licensed games just lost to time. If that sounds like your kind of story, consider subbing. There's a place for you here in the save room. The second game starts outside the house with a message. The legend has it there's a house in a small town that has been closed and left empty for decades. The house belonged to a wealthy family, but then one day all family members, father, mother, daughter, and the maid, committed suicide. From that time, the neighbors have closed the house for good as they believe that the house where all the family committed suicide is cursed. Some said that they have heard a woman's screaming voice from that house, yet no one dare enter the house. Then we approach the porch and have to remove the boards over the door. And then we enter the first room. Inside the living room, there's not much at first, just a light switch, a note, and a framed family photo of Nicole A. Maddie with her adoptive parents. Interacting with each item slowly reveals more. A shadowy figure eventually appears seated in the armchair. After that, clicking the photo again causes blood to trickle from the nearby vent. The longer you stay in the room, the more unstable things get. The original note changes. A ghostly figure of a maid appears briefly and drops a second note. If you keep interacting with both notes in the photo, the image of the family warps into something disturbing. Eventually, the second note is stained with blood, the first message becomes unfinished, and the ghost of the maid fully materializes in front of you. The housemaid, referred to in the game as the nursemaid, was hired by the Roche family to care for Nicole and Maddie, but she started to notice strange things in the house: noises, shadows, apparitions, and Nicole. Nicole was talking to someone who wasn't there. That someone was Arina Rou, the child Nicole had replaced. The maid learned the truth. Nicole had been adopted, and Arlena had been murdered by her own parents. The maid began to fear for her life. She wrote down what she saw and planned to leave. But before she could, the couple killed her too, likely in the very room we find her. In the opening scene, there's a mention of a neighbor hearing a woman crying. That may have been her, still trying to escape. In this second bathroom, the setup is deceptively calm. A Bible rests on a small table, the shower is concealed by a plain curtain, the toilet is empty, the sink works, but the longer you stay, the more this room unravels. We start out by turning on the faucet and triggering the toilet flush, and after a few repetitions of that, the shadow of a man briefly appears. Then the faucet begins pouring blood, and a note floats out with words. "I am truly sorry for what I have done. To our kid, please forgive me." Eventually, a figure appears to be behind the curtain. Pulling it back reveals a hanged man, presumably the father. Moments later, the body vanishes. The Bible and note remain. Then the room spirals. The words "forgive me" scrawl themselves in blood across the walls, and the ghost of the father steps forward in full view. There's nothing much else to say about this room. After this room, the door opens for you to go to the next room, the bedroom. This is Nicole A. Maddie's bedroom, and at first, it almost feels quiet. Just a music box, a teddy bear, and her adoption certificate on display. But this is house 2. Nothing stays quiet for long. We start by clicking the teddy bear and the adoption certificate, and when you interact with the music box enough, it begins playing a haunting rendition of Silent Night. It's slow, off-tempo, the kind of tune that feels more like a memory than a melody. Clicking the bear and certificate again summons a shadow of a small girl that glides across the screen. Then 3 torn notes appear stuck to the wall. You read each one, a faint heartbeat starts building, and a childlike voice murmurs through the room. Suddenly, a figure appears by the bed. Blood smears across the wall with jagged red letters. "Play with me." There's a family drawing that's been done in crayon that can now be interacted with. The childlike art shows stick figures of Nicole and another little girl beside her. We keep clicking the available items, and eventually 2 shadows move across the screen. A ghostly child begins walking towards you. Just before you can escape into the next room, Nicole appears one final time. Her face is distorted, smiling wide with something behind her eyes that no child should ever carry. The screen lingers, but this still isn't the final scare. Nicole claimed to be playing with another little girl, Arlena's ghost. The two became inseparable, hiding together, whispering, showing up in Nicole's crayon drawings. Her parents tried to ignore it, but the presence of Arlena's grew stronger. The housemaid reported hearing voices, seeing shadows. Eventually, the parents snapped. In this desperation to silence the haunting and cover up Arlena's fate, they killed Nicole and the maid. Then, in a final spiral of guilt and fear, both parents took their own lives. The house was never cleansed. Now all of them remain trapped, but Nicole, whether innocent or changed by Arlena, still wanders the halls, asking you to play, as if time never passed. When entering the workroom, it's pitch black. No sound, no motion, just silence. We click the light switch and the room flickers to life. There's a few key objects: a bottle labeled authority-approved nitric acid poison, a thick rope leading into a floor hatch, and a birth certificate on the desk. When we click the rope, it won't budge. There's something heavy on the end of it. We interact with everything in the room, then try the rope again. And suddenly, the mother's corpse is yanked up from the darkness beneath the floor. The player's heartbeat surges. She sways silently in front of you. Her neck's twisted, her arms are limp, but her story isn't over yet. We turn off the lights, and in the dark, something faint glimmers in her coat pocket. We'll find the key to the safe room. We keep toggling the lights, clicking the poison, the birth certificate at the body, until eventually she disappears. Gone, rope left swinging. We keep interacting until a single paper appears beneath the chair. It's a photo of a baby, Arina Rou. Stare at it for just long enough, and then the two pale hands reach out from the screen and snatch it away. She doesn't want you remembering what they did. Mary Rou was born into wealth, married to Miles G. Rou. The two seemed to live a perfect life, but when their only daughter, Arlena, was born mentally disabled in 1947, something inside them broke. By 1962, they made a horrifying decision. They poisoned Arlena and sealed her body in the house safe. Locked it away with a code only they would remember, her birth year, 1947. A year later, they adopted Nicole Maddie to replace her. But ghosts don't stay buried. The housemaid they hired discovered the truth. She found Nicole's adoption certificate, started asking questions about the locked safe, the noises, the shadows Nicole spoke to. She tried to leave, and she didn't make it. What happened next was a descent into guilt, madness, and spiritual rot. Miles hanged himself in the bathroom, and Mary followed in this very room we're in. Nicole died too, but whether she did it herself or Arlena claimed her, we'll never know. Some say Nicole never wanted to leave Arlena's side. Now the house remembers all of them. Mary Rou was an architect of this family's destruction. Its protector, its destroyer, and the last one left standing. And even in death, she guards the one thing she couldn't control, the truth. There's only one more room, the safe room. And there's only one thing in this room, a steel vault. The keypad waits, silent, expectant. The code is obvious by now, Arina Rou's birthday, 1947. As the final digit clicks into place, the whole vault shudders like something inside it just woke up. You click it to open it, embracing for the image that haunted every room since you stepped inside. But there's no body, just a single note. I want to live, no matter what. You don't get time to process it. The lights flicker again, and then just stillness, until you see her. A face behind pale hands, eyes you can barely make out. You know who it is. The light shuts off, and when they come back, Arina's face is inches from the screen, screaming, and everything goes black. She was never gone. She was never forgiven. They buried her body, her voice, her very name, and she waited. And now that you open the vault, she's not going back. Arina Rou was born on October 8, 1947, physically deformed, mentally disabled, and utterly innocent. To her parents, Miles and Mary, that innocence wasn't enough. In what they justified as an act of mercy, they poisoned their daughter and sealed her tiny body inside the house's safe. They used her birth year, 1947, as the combination code, and then tried to move on. But grief doesn't stay locked away forever. In 1963, the Rou family adopted a new child, Nicole Maddie, and 1 year later, Arina came back. She returned not as a child, but as a spirit. And not one of pure rage. Arina hated her parents for what they've done, but she was kind to Nicole. She watched over her, played games with her, even joined her in drawing. To Nicole, Arina wasn't a monster, she was a friend. But the house knew better. The maid began hearing laughter in the dark, footsteps, that didn't belong to anyone living. Crying that moved from room to room. Nicole's pictures showed two girls where there should have been one, and slowly the walls of the house began to remember what happened here. By 1965, the memory turned into madness, the Rou parents crumbling under guilt and fear, murdered Nicole and the housemaid in cold blood. Then they took their own lives. Miles hanging himself in the bathroom, Mary doing the same in the working room. But death didn't end anything, it just trapped them all inside. By the time you arrive at the house, no one's living remains. The only thing left is Arina, and the question of what she became. In the house, too, Arina doesn't speak. She doesn't walk the halls. She's only mentioned in notes, whispered about in corners. But in the final moments, when you open the vault, she emerges, grown, in a white dress with long black hair. Her face is hidden behind her hands, and when she finally shows us, she screams. Whether she kills the player or just releases her pain is left unclear. But for the first time, you see not the deformed child her parents threw away, but the woman she might have grown into. If only she'd been given the chance. And that might be the cruelest part. She aged. She became whole in death. She found a friend in Nicole, a purpose in haunting, and maybe even a voice. But even now, she's still screaming. The house was quiet, intimate, a whisper of tragedy trapped in static rooms and fading memories, but the house too was something else entirely. It took the same foundation and wrapped it in something darker, more layered. Each room told a different piece of the same story, one that spiraled outward from a single cruel decision. a child poisoned, a family consumed by guilt, and a house that never stopped remembering. What made these games stand out wasn't just the jump scares or the shock value. It was how they used stillness, the slow repetition, the feeling that every click pulled you deeper into something you weren't meant to see. And even if the ghost only flickered on screen for a moment, the sorrow that carried lingered. There's no happy endings here, just a locked safe, a year carved into memory, and the sound of footsteps behind you after the lights go out. And if you all have memories of the house or the house 2, maybe the first time it scared you or just that weird feeling it left behind, drop them in the comments. I always read through them. And I love hearing how these old Flash games hit people differently. I cover lost horror, forgotten console games, and games most people stopped talking about years ago. But here, we remember them. But I hope you all like this one, and as always, I'll see y'all later.